Hi, my name is Annabelle Glisson, and I spent 2 months over the summer living in Japan for an internship and study abroad program. I had to adjust to many things while living there, such as the vast train systems, how to learn and respect Japan's culture, and even just how to be a local and adjust to living life there, which lead me to what this documentary is all about, is recognizing how Japan operates in one of the UN's Sustainable Development Goals, sustainable cities and communities with an emphasis on responsible consumption and production. Now, you may be asking yourself in the first place, what even is sustainability? Well, according to UGA's Office of Sustainability, it's the just and ethical integration of social, environmental, and economic solutions to ensure that people can thrive both now and in the future. For example, you may have heard about Japan's insanely clean streets, or their eco-friendly transportation options that primarily involve only using trains. But there were so many small differences I noticed while living there, such as escalators. So many of the escalators in Japan are motion activated, so within the first week of living there I thought a lot of them didn't work, but I quickly realized that they're just motion activated to conserve energy. And advertisements for sustainability were everywhere, and I mean everywhere. And in many Japanese hotels, guests are asked to use a toilet paper roll-up before opening a new one. We went to a baseball game and I noticed that there are 6 different ways to dispose of your waste at a baseball game. I mean, could you imagine that at Stanford Stadium? There's burnables, non-burnables, food waste, plastic cups, pet bottles, and even ice and liquid waste before throwing away your container. I mean, even many of the convenience stores that we frequented to get snacks like 7-Eleven and Family Mart, they had 4 different ways to dispose of your waste. So now you might be wondering, how has Japan woven sustainability into its daily life like this? Well, consider this. Japan is roughly the size of California, but it's home to more than 120 million people. With so many people and limited space, there simply isn't room for sprawling landfills. And Japanese people understand this. That with such limited space, it's a necessity to respect each other and take care of their environment. So from a young age, they learn that keeping shared spaces clean is everyone's responsibility. Streets stay clean not because of strict enforcement, but because the community works together to keep them that way. This is my best friend Ellie, and for her 22nd birthday, she decided to visit me and help me with my documentary as we traveled to a zero-waste city called Kamikatsu. A zero-waste city is built on the idea that almost nothing should be thrown away, striving to keep over 90% of its waste out of landfills and incinerators by reducing what they use, reusing what they can, and recycling the rest. Yet, the journey to Kamikatsu was a lot harder than Ellie and I thought it was going to be. It's located on one of the least visited islands of Japan, on top of a mountain. First, we accidentally bought the wrong train tickets to get to Kyoto, so we had to buy new ones, we were out of money, and we had to stand in the bathrooms of the Shinkansen train to Kyoto for 2.5 hours. But we were fine. I mean, Ellie sat and ate her snacks, and I read my book, and we were just happy to make it to Kyoto. And then once we got to Kyoto, we realized it was going to be even harder to get to the island of Shikoku. Because it's one of the least visited islands of Japan, and all the directions were in Japanese, it was really hard to figure out.
And we didn't know what mode of transportation to take. Like, it literally didn't say it.
We're on the bus the next 3 hours, headed to Tokushima.
Obviously, we realized we had to take a bus from Kyoto to the island of Shikoku. And then the next day, we rented a car and drove about an hour and a half up the mountain to finally make it to the city of Kamikatsu. And it felt even more rewarding because we had trials and tribulations along the way. When we arrived in Kamikatsu, we discovered that the hotel and waste facility are built in the shape of a question mark, a deliberate design meant to inspire visitors to constantly reflect on sustainability and their own waste habits. As shown here, the facility is designed in the shape of a question mark, with the dot acting as the hotel accommodation where we stayed on the property. And at check-in, we were asked how many cups of tea we would drink during our stay. The staff measured out precisely that amount of tea leaves, ensuring no resources were wasted. They even asked me to cut how much soap we'd be using during our stay, and I cut too small of a piece, so they made me redo it again a second time. The staff were so friendly and told us the entire facility was built using wood from the forest around Kamikatsu. About 700 window paints were donated for the project, and 570 of them ended up being used in the final design. Many of the lamps around the facility were used with glass bottles, and even the reception desk was made out of crates that they found laying around. I thought that was so cool. My favorite part was the hotel sign, because you could tell they just made it out of items they found laying around. They even had a community sharing area where visitors could take items at no cost. All of the goods were donated by local residents, including clothes, cups, bowls, and sake sets. Ellie and I were so excited to take a small piece of kamikatsu back home with us. Of course, the hotel had 6 different bins for disposing our trash in the hotel room. The next day, we were able to go on a tour of the facility and dispose of our own waste ourselves. We learned that Kamikatsu has over 45 different categories to sort their trash. The community has managed to recycle up of 80% of their waste, an incredible achievement compared to America's 32%. We learned there were so many types of paper we hadn't realized needed different handling. There were separate categories for paper cups, milk cartons, paper rolls, magazines, shredded paper, construction paper, and more. Even dirty paper, like receipts or anything with ink that had been written on, had its own bin, separate from a bin with clean or unused paper. But each bin came with its own cost or profit. For example, these 2 bins were for metal caps and plastic caps. Disposing of a plastic cap costs 62 yen each, while a metal cap actually earns the community a profit of 20 yen per cap. This is because the metal caps can be sold and recycled into new materials at a profit, while the plastic caps require a more costly processing method that the community has to pay for. I love that they even had an area where you could wash and dry your items before sorting them out. They had a furniture section where we found this really cool old Japanese massage chair. And even cooler, they let me use the compost to dispose of a banana I ate that morning. But most importantly, we learned that in 2024, Kamikatsu earned 2 million yen in profit from recycling. It's truly inspiring to see a community reach an 80% recycling rate and actually profit from it. The staff were so friendly and nice, and the city of Kamikatsu was absolutely beautiful. It was so exciting to learn so much about waste practices and sustainability, and it was definitely one of the highlights of my trip in Japan. This is Glenn, a relative of mine who owns a textile business with an office here in Japan called Innovasia. I had the chance to visit his office and learn how sustainability plays a role in a completely different setting, the business world. I learned that in today's textile industry, sustainability is not just a choice, it's a requirement. According to Glenn, his textiles must meet strict safety standards because of Japan's frequent natural hazards, like tsunamis and earthquakes. But beyond that, there are sustainability requirements in place to ensure that when the textiles are eventually processed, they comply with Japan's waste regulations. Glenn's company works hard to reduce waste and minimize environmental impact. For example, they use biodegradable plastic bags to package fabric rolls, cutting down on plastic pollution. Around 80% of an Innovasia's workforce commutes via public transportation, helping to lower their carbon footprint. Innovasia creates products from recycled materials with reduced environmental impact. Many of their fabrics are made from renewable sources like wool and mohair, and the company offers recycling programs for non-renewable polyester fabrics. Innovasia's website even highlights which of their textiles, acoustic wall coverings, fabrics, ceilings, and more are made from sustainable resources, along with details on exactly what they're made from. Overall, talking with Glenn was such a cool experience. It really opened my eyes to how in Japan, sustainability isn't just encouraged, it's a requirement in business. This is Vasco, a friend I met during my internship in Japan. I wanted to gain his insight on the differences he has observed and the social dynamics of sustainability in Japan. The first question I decided to ask him about was his impression on litter and cleanliness in Japan when he first arrived.
So one interesting thing I learned about Japan, and that lasted with me, was just how little there was of any litter. And this would go for almost every area in Tokyo specifically, where I just would never see any trash anywhere. When it came to like the train stations, the public spaces, my room felt messier than the actual streets usually.
Next, I decided to ask him if he thought that the culture of cleanliness was taught in schools or truly just reinforced by community practices.
I think the actual culture of being cleanliness is not something that's necessarily taught in schools, but it can be maybe a stepping stone for the greater community action point. So in terms of just local neighborhood cleanups or beach cleanups, or just to actually learn from how your parents keep the house clean, I think it becomes more of a secondhand nature rather than something you're just learning in a school and studying and working at.
And from that, I decided to ask him if his own habits around trash or recycling changed while living there.
Living in Japan has definitely notably changed just my own little personal habits, as I feel like there's a lot more personal responsibility I have in terms of just my garbage that I produce, even just the garbage I see around the streets. So especially I've definitely been taking a double take every now and then when I'm about to throw something out in the US versus how it was in Japan, where it kind of became second nature. Okay, let me peel the plastic off my water bottle. Okay, I got to take the cap off too. It's so different than the United States, and it's so much more specific and down to the actual nuts and bolts of it, where it's really efficient when you actually learn it finally.
And I agree with many things that Vasco said. After reflecting on my trip to Kamikatsu, meeting with Glenn, and observing my environment while living in Japan, it became apparent to me that my trash was my own responsibility. In the United States, we often blame the system for failing to recycle or properly dispose of waste, so we just don't try hard enough. But ultimately, everything we purchase becomes our responsibility, and with that comes the need to properly manage what we consume and make better choices of what we purchase. I also believe that many of our generations didn't grow up understanding what sustainability means. It's not that people don't want to do better, often they simply don't know how. Change takes time, but sustainable cities and communities thrive on the idea that individual responsibility leads to collective impact. And from that, Japan stands as a clear example that it is possible to build a community that both respects each other's space and the environment.